The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. Now they knew. The universe was full of life. Hundreds of alien species lived among the stars, trading, fighting, and building empires that spanned entire galaxies. Humanity was the newcomer. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. To the older species, humans were like children taking their first steps. Some aliens found them interesting. Others found them annoying. And some, like the Malari, saw them as nothing more than future slaves. The Galactic Assembly met on Station Prime, a massive space station that floated between 3 different solar systems. It was neutral ground where all species could meet and talk. The station was so large that it had its own weather. Clouds formed near the ceiling of the Great Hall, and sometimes it even rained during long meetings. Ambassador Tom Wilson walked into the assembly chamber with his head held high. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had spent 30 years as a diplomat on Earth before volunteering for this mission. Behind him walked his team, advisors, translators, and a small military escort led by Captain Lisa Park. Lisa was younger than Tom, only 35 years old. She had short black hair and sharp eyes that never stopped watching. She had grown up in a military family. Her father had been a general, and her younger brother, James, was a colony administrator on New Haven, one of humanity's outer settlements. The chamber was filled with aliens of every shape and size. Some had tentacles. Others had wings. A few were made of living crystal that chimed when they moved. Tom had studied all of them, learning their customs and their history. He believed that understanding was the key to peace. The keeper sat at the center of the chamber. Nobody knew how old the keeper was. Some said thousands of years. Others said millions. The keeper looked like a floating sphere of soft light. When it spoke, everyone listened. Tom approached the speaking platform. He felt the eyes of 100 species watching him. Honored members of the Galactic Assembly, Tom began. Humanity comes to you in peace. We seek trade, friendship, and mutual understanding. We know we are young compared to your great civilizations. We have much to learn, but we also have much to offer. He spoke for an hour about human culture, science, and dreams. He showed images of Earth's beautiful oceans and green forests. He played recordings of human music and poetry. He talked about humanity's history, including the wars and mistakes they had made. He was honest about everything. When he finished, there was silence. Then the aliens began to discuss among themselves. Elder Vrix of the Malari Collective rose from his seat. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 yellow eyes. The Malari were known throughout the galaxy as conquerors. They had defeated 17 species and turned them into servants. Their empire was built on the backs of slaves. I have listened to the humans speak, Rick said. His voice was cold and sharp, like breaking ice. Pretty words. Nice pictures. But I see the truth. He walked toward Tom, his 4 eyes studying the human like a predator studying prey. Your species is weak, Rix continued. Your ships are slow. Your weapons are primitive. You have been traveling among the stars for only 50 of your years. The Malari have ruled for 10,000. Lisa stepped forward, placing herself between Rix and Tom. Her hand moved toward her weapon, but Tom gently stopped her. We do not seek conflict, Tom said calmly. We only ask for the chance to prove ourselves as worthy members of this community. Rix laughed. It was an ugly sound. Prove yourselves? You are insects. Your colonies are unprotected. Your people are scattered across space in tiny settlements. It would take us one day to bring your entire species under our control. Other aliens shifted uncomfortably. The Malari were powerful, and many feared them. But this was supposed to be neutral ground. Threats were not welcome here. The keeper's light grew brighter. When it spoke, the entire chamber fell silent. "Elder Vrix," the keeper said. Its voice was like wind through leaves, soft but impossible to ignore. "I have watched many species rise and fall. I have seen empires built and destroyed. And I tell you now, do not assault the humans." Vrix turned to face the ancient being. "Why not?" "They are nothing. They are not like us," the keeper replied. "I have studied them since they first reached the stars. They are different from any species I have encountered. When wounded, they do not retreat. They advance. When their people are taken, they do not negotiate. They hunt. They will follow you across the stars. They will track you through time itself. They will never stop. They will never let you go." For a moment, the chamber was completely silent. Even Vrix seemed uncertain. Then he laughed again. "Stories to frighten children. The humans are soft. They talk about peace and friendship. They are not warriors." The keeper's light dimmed slightly. "I have given my warning. The choice is yours." That night, while the human delegation slept on Station Prime, the Malari fleet moved. 12 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel above New Haven, the small human colony on the edge of explored space. The colony had no warships. Only 2,000 people lived there, mostly farmers and scientists. They had a few small defense guns, but nothing that could stop a Malari battle fleet. James Park was working late in his office when the attack began. He was Lisa's younger brother, a gentle man who loved growing plants and reading old books. He had come to New Haven because he wanted to help build something new. The sky lit up with fire. Malari soldiers poured down from their ships. They moved through the colony with terrible efficiency, stunning people with their weapons and dragging them toward transport vessels. James tried to help others escape. He led a group of children to a shelter before the soldiers found him. They hit him with a stun blast, and everything went dark. When the Malari fleet left, they took 200 humans with them. James Park was among them. The next morning, Tom Wilson received the news. He watched Lisa's face as she learned that her brother had been taken. He saw something change in her eyes. The kindness was still there, but now there was something else. Something hard and cold and patient. "What do we do?" Lisa asked quietly. Tom looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "We do what humans have always done. We never give up. We never forget. And we never let go." The hunt was about to begin. 3 months passed after the attack on New Haven. The Malari believed the matter was finished. They had taken what they wanted, and the humans had done nothing but send angry messages through diplomatic channels. Vrix laughed when he read the protests. Words on paper meant nothing to him. The 200 human prisoners were put to work in Malari mining colonies. The work was hard, and the conditions were terrible. Many aliens had died in those mines over the centuries. But the humans refused to break. They helped each other. They shared their food. They told stories at night to keep their spirits alive. And they waited. They knew somehow that their people would come. James Park worked in the deepest section of the mine. His hands were covered in cuts and burns. His body was thin from lack of food. But his mind stayed sharp. He memorized everything he saw. The guard schedules, the layout of the facility, the weaknesses in the security systems. He wrote nothing down because that would be too dangerous. He kept it all in his head, far away, on Earth. Commander David Kim stood in a secret military facility buried deep underground. He was 42 years old, with a serious face and calm eyes. He had spent 20 years in the military, fighting in small wars and leading dangerous missions. But this mission was different. This mission was personal. "Show me everything," David said to his team. Lieutenant Amy Lee pulled up holographic displays that filled the room with light. Amy was the best intelligence officer in the fleet. She had a gift for finding information that others thought was hidden. She had been working without sleep for weeks, building a picture of the Malari Collective. "We've mapped their entire civilization," Amy said. "Every colony, every military base, every trade route, every ship." The display showed the Malari Empire spread across dozens of star systems. It was huge, much bigger than humanity's small collection of colonies. But size wasn't everything. How did we get all this? David asked. Amy smiled slightly. Humans are everywhere now. We have merchants trading in Malari space, scientists visiting their worlds for research, tourists taking pictures. Every single one of them has been collecting information for us. They didn't even know they were doing it. We put tiny sensors in their equipment. Everything they saw, we saw. David nodded. This was the human way. They didn't have the biggest ships or the strongest weapons. But they were clever, and they were patient. What about the prisoners? David asked. Another officer stepped forward. His name was Robert Chun, and he specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. We've located them, Robert said. They're being held on a moon called Vrick 7, deep in Malari territory. It's a mining facility. Heavy security. About 500 guards and 20,000 slaves from various species. Can we get them out? Robert paused. Not easily. If we send a fleet, the Malari will see us coming. They'll move the prisoners or kill them before we arrive. We need a different approach. David turned back to the main display. He stared at it for a long time, thinking. We don't attack, he said finally. Not yet. We prepare. We watch. We learn everything about them. And when the time is right, we take everything from them at once. The plan was simple in concept, but complex in execution. Human agents would infiltrate every level of Malari society. They would make friends with aliens who hated the Malari. They would bribe officials and steal secrets. They would plant tiny cameras and listening devices in important places. And they would wait for the perfect moment. Over the next 3 months, the plan unfolded. Human merchant ships appeared in Malari space, always following the rules, always polite and friendly. They sold goods at fair prices and made themselves useful. The Malari tolerated them because they brought valuable trade, but every merchant was also a spy. Every ship carried hidden equipment. Every conversation was recorded and sent back to Earth. Amy Lee coordinated the entire network from her underground base. She never slept more than 4 hours a night. Her screen showed hundreds of data streams from across the Malari Empire. She knew when Vrix ate breakfast. She knew the names of his children. She knew which officers were loyal and which ones secretly hated their leader. Human diplomats visited other alien species, the ones who had suffered under Malari rule. They asked questions and listened to stories. They gathered evidence of crimes and recorded testimonies. They made allies who would stay quiet for now but would speak loudly when the time came. On the Malari homeworld, Vrix began to feel uneasy. Nothing was obviously wrong. The humans hadn't attacked. They hadn't made threats. But something felt different. He saw human faces everywhere now. In the markets. In the spaceports. Always watching. Always smiling. What are they doing? Vrix demanded during a meeting with his advisors. Nothing illegal, one advisor answered. They follow our laws. They pay their taxes. They cause no trouble. Then why do I feel like prey being circled by hunters? Nobody could answer him. No species had ever responded to Malari aggression this way. Usually, the weak species either fought back immediately and lost, or they surrendered and accepted their fate. The humans did neither. They just waited. Back on Vrick 7, James Park had organized the human prisoners into a secret network. They communicated using hand signals and coded words. They had identified every guard who was cruel and every guard who was kind. They had found weak points in the security fence. They had hidden small tools stolen from the mines. James didn't know when rescue would come, but he knew it would come. That was what humans did. They never abandoned their own. One night, a new prisoner arrived at the facility. She was a human woman named Susan White. The guards threw her into the same cell block as James. When the guards were gone, Susan moved close to James and whispered, "I'm not really a prisoner. I let myself be captured. I have a message for you." James felt his heart beat faster. "What message?" Susan smiled. "They're coming. All of them. Every ship we have. But not yet. First, they need you to do something. Anything. When the attack begins, there will be chaos. The guards will try to kill the prisoners before we can rescue them. We need you to stop them. Can you do that?" James thought about the tools they had hidden, the weak points they had found, the allies they had made among the other prisoners. "Yes," he said. "We can do that." Susan nodded. "Good. Tell your people to be ready. The hunt is almost over. And when humans hunt, we always catch our prey." 3 more months passed. The humans continued watching, learning, and preparing. The Malari continued to ignore the warning they had been given. And then, one day, everything changed. Commander David Kim stood on the bridge of the USS Perseverance, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. Around him, 50 other human ships waited in the darkness between stars. Their engines were cold. Their lights were off. They were invisible to Malari sensors. "All teams report ready," Lieutenant Amy Lee said from her station. David checked the time. In 30 seconds, the largest military operation in human history would begin. Attacks would happen simultaneously across 17 different locations. The timing had to be perfect. "Remember," David said to his crew, "our primary goal is rescue. We take our people back. Everything else is secondary." The clock counted down. 10 seconds. 5 seconds. "Execute," David said, calmly. Across the galaxy, human forces move like a single organism. Communication relays that the Malari had built over centuries went dark as small teams of human soldiers destroyed them with precise explosives. Without those relays, the Malari fleet couldn't coordinate. Each ship was suddenly alone. At 14 different space stations, human merchants who had been living peacefully among the Malari revealed their true purpose. They disabled security systems, locked doors, and took control of computer networks. Malari officers woke up to find themselves prisoners in their own stations. Admiral Grace Taylor commanded the main fleet from her flagship, the USS Justice. She was 60 years old, with white hair and a voice that could cut through steel. She had lost her son in a Malari raid 5 years ago. She had been waiting for this moment ever since. "All ships, engage," she ordered. The human fleet appeared from nowhere. Malari warships tried to respond, but their communications were dead. They couldn't call for help. They couldn't coordinate their defense. They fought alone, and alone they fell. But the humans didn't destroy them. That wasn't the plan. Instead, they disabled Malari ships with precise shots that knocked out their engines and weapons. Then human boarding teams entered the crippled vessels and took the crews prisoner. "We're not murderers," Grace had told her captains before the battle. "We're better than them. We take prisoners. We show mercy. And we make them understand what they've done wrong." On the moon called Vrick 7, David Kim led the rescue team personally. His ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above the mining facility. Alarms screamed throughout the Malari base. "Landing teams, go," David commanded. Dozens of small ships poured from the Perseverance, carrying hundreds of soldiers. They hit the ground running, moving toward the prison facility where the human captives were held. Inside the prison, James Park heard the alarms. He knew what they meant. The moment had come. Now. He shouted to the other prisoners. The humans moved with perfect coordination. They had practiced this in secret for months. Using the tools they had hidden, they broke their chains and attacked the guards. Other prisoners from other species joined them. Aliens who had been waiting years for a chance to fight back. Sergeant Mike Brown was the first human soldier to reach the prison block. He was a big man with a gentle heart who had volunteered for this mission because his cousin was among the captives. He kicked down the door and found James Park standing over an unconscious guard, holding a metal pipe. "James Park?" Mike asked. "That's me," James replied with a tired smile. "Took you long enough." Mike laughed despite the chaos around them. "Your sister sent me. She said to tell you she's very annoyed that you got captured." That sounds like Lisa. More human soldiers poured into the facility. They moved through the corridors with speed and precision, freeing prisoners and securing guards. The Malari tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. The humans had studied this facility for months. They knew every corner, every hiding place, every trap. Within 2 hours, the facility was under human control. All 200 humans from New Haven were found alive. Many were injured and sick, but they were alive. 20,000 other prisoners from 17 different species were also freed. David Kim walked through the prison, looking at the conditions the Malari had kept their slaves in. The cells were dirty and cold. The food was barely enough to survive on. Medical care was almost non-existent. He felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. There would be time for justice later. "Commander," one of his officers reported, "we've secured 14 Malari warships and 7 military stations. Over 5,000 Malari soldiers are now our prisoners." David nodded. "Treat them well. Give them food and medical care. Show them that we're not like them." Across the galaxy, the battle was ending. The Malari Harvest Festival had turned into a nightmare. Their fleet was crippled. Their communication network was destroyed. Their leaders were prisoners. Admiral Grace Taylor broadcast a message on all frequencies. Her voice was calm and clear. "This is the United Earth Fleet. We have recovered our people who was stolen from New Haven. Your ships and soldiers are now in our custody. Your communication relays are destroyed. Your supply lines are cut. We will discuss the return of your prisoners when you are ready to listen." On the Malari homeworld, Vrix received the news in shock. He had thought humans were weak. He had thought they would never fight back. He had been terribly wrong. But the worst part wasn't the military defeat. It was what came next. Human diplomats delivered a file to the Malari government. Inside was everything. The location of every Malari military base, the names of every officer, the routes of every supply ship, the secrets of every government official. The humans had spent 6 months learning everything about the Malari, and now they proved it. The message was clear without needing words. "We know everything about you. We can reach you anywhere. We can hurt you whenever we choose. You are not safe. You will never be safe again." James Park was loaded onto a medical ship bound for Earth. His wounds would heal. His body would recover. But he would never forget what he had experienced in those minds' as the ship left Malari space. He looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, his sister Lisa was waiting for him. Somewhere out there, the people who had taken him were learning a lesson they would never forget. Humans remember. Humans hunt. And humans never, ever let go. The Malari Collective, once the most feared empire in the region, was falling apart. Their military had been crippled in a single night, but that wasn't what destroyed them. What destroyed them was something far more powerful than weapons. It was the truth. Human diplomats traveled to every corner of the galaxy. They visited species that had suffered under Molari rule for centuries. They brought recordings of Molari crimes, videos of slaves being beaten, documents proving that millions had died. In their minds, testimonies from survivors who had escaped their cruelty. The evidence was undeniable. The Molari had built their empire on suffering and death. And now everyone knew it. Species that had traded with the Molari stopped. Governments that had feared the Molari now refused to speak with them. Even neutral parties who had stayed silent for years finally found their voices. The Molari economy collapsed. Without trade, they couldn't get the resources they needed. Without communication relays, their scattered colonies couldn't coordinate. Without allies, they had no one to help them rebuild. Vrix watched his empire crumble from his palace on the Molari homeworld. Every day brought worse news. Colonies were declaring independence. Military officers were surrendering to human forces without fighting. The people he had ruled through fear were now turning against him. His advisors urged him to negotiate with the humans. He refused. He couldn't accept that his species, which had conquered so many others, could be brought low by these newcomers. But eventually, even Vrix couldn't ignore reality. The Molari Council forced him to step down. They chose a new leader, a younger female named Vina, who had opposed Vrix's policies for years. She understood that the only way forward was peace. Vina sent a message to Earth, requesting a meeting. Ambassador Tom Wilson returned to Station Prime for the negotiations. He looked older than he had a year ago. The stress of the crisis had worn on him. But his eyes still held kindness, and his voice still carried hope. Captain Lisa Park came with him, now promoted to Admiral for her role in planning the rescue operation. Her brother James walked beside her, serving as her aide. James was thinner than before, and sometimes he woke up screaming from nightmares. But he was healing, day by day. The negotiating room was small and plain. Tom sat on one side. Vina sat on the other. There were no weapons allowed, no guards inside. Just two people trying to find a way forward. "You have won," Vina said. Her voice was tired. "What do you want from us?" Tom was quiet for a moment. He had thought about this question for a long time. "We want justice," he said finally. "Not revenge. Justice. What does that mean?" Tom leaned forward. "Every Molari who participated in the attack on New Haven will stand trial. A real trial with evidence and lawyers and judges. If they're found guilty, they'll face punishment. If they're innocent, they'll go free." Vina nodded slowly. This was expected. "Every human who was taken will be compensated," Tom continued. "Money for their suffering, medical care for their injuries, counseling for their trauma. The Molari government will pay for all of it." "Agreed," Vina said. "The slaves from other species will be freed, all of them. The Molari will help them return to their homeworlds or find new homes if they prefer." This was harder for Vina to accept. The Molari economy depended on slave labor. Without slaves, they would have to change everything about how their society worked. But she nodded again. "And finally," Tom said, "the Molari will spend the next century proving that you've changed. You will open your borders to observers. You will allow inspections of your facilities. You will demonstrate, year after year, that you are no longer the species that conquered and enslaved." Vina's four eyes studied Tom carefully. "And if we refuse?" Admiral Lisa Park spoke for the first time. Her voice was calm, but carried weight like stone. "Then we wait," she said. "We watch. We remember. And someday, when you think enough time has passed, when your guard is down and you've forgotten what we can do, we remind you. We will always be there. We will always remember. We will never let go." The room was silent. Vina looked from Lisa to James, seeing the family resemblance. She looked at the young man who had survived her people's minds. She saw no hatred in his eyes, only sadness and determination. "I understand," Vina said quietly. "We agreed to your terms." The agreement was written and signed within hours. News spread across the galaxy. The Molari, the conquerors, the slavers, the feared ones, had surrendered to humanity completely. In the following months, the trials began. Rix himself was brought before a court made up of judges from 12 different species. Evidence was presented. Witnesses testified. The trial was broadcast across the galaxy so everyone could see. Rix was found guilty of crimes against sentient beings. He was sentenced to spend the rest of his life in a prison on a distant moon, where he would do the same work he had forced his slaves to do. Some thought this was too merciful. Others thought it was poetic justice. The freed slaves scattered across the galaxy. Some returned home. Others started new lives on human colonies, where they were welcomed as friends. A few even stayed in Molari space, working with species like Vina to build something better from the ruins of the old empire. James Park testified at several trials. He spoke about what he had seen and experienced. It was painful to relive those memories, but he understood that his words were important. They would be recorded and preserved forever, so that no one could ever pretend the Molari crimes hadn't happened. After the last trial, James found his sister Lisa sitting alone on a balcony on Station Prime. She was looking up at the stars. "How do you feel?" James asked. Lisa thought about it. "Tired," she said, "but hopeful. Do you think they'll really change? The Molari? Maybe. Maybe not. It doesn't matter." James looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" Lisa turned to face him. "It doesn't matter if they change, because they want to or because they're afraid. What matters is that they know the truth now. Everyone knows. You can't build an empire on cruelty when the whole galaxy is watching." James nodded slowly. He understood. The humans hadn't just won a military victory. They had changed the rules of the game. They had shown that information and patience could be more powerful than weapons and fear. "What happens now?" James asked. Lisa smiled slightly. "Now we do what humans always do. We keep watching, we keep remembering, and we never, ever let go." Above them, the stars shone cold and bright, witnesses to a universe that was slowly learning not to touch the humans. The colony itself had grown from a small farming settlement into a thriving city of 2 million people. Buildings rose toward the sky, surrounded by parks and gardens. Children played in streets named after heroes of the rescue: Kim Boulevard, Brown Square, Wilson Park. At the center of the city stood a memorial listing the names of everyone who had been taken that terrible night. Admiral Lisa Park, now 85 years old, had retired to a small house near the memorial. Her hair was white, and her steps were slower, but her eyes still held that sharp intelligence that had made her famous. She spent her days reading, gardening, and telling stories to the neighborhood children who loved to visit the legendary admiral. Her brother, James, had become one of humanity's most respected diplomats. He spent 30 years traveling between species, building friendships, and solving conflicts before they could turn violent. The young man who had been dragged from his home by Molari soldiers had transformed into a bridge between worlds. Now 78 years old, James was preparing for one last mission before retirement. The Galactic Assembly had asked him to give a speech about human history to the newest members of the interstellar community. 3 young species had just developed faster than light travel, and they were eager to learn from the older civilizations. James stood before the assembly in the same chamber where Tom Wilson had spoken 5 decades ago. The ancient keeper still floated at the center, its light unchanged by time. New species filled the seats where old ones had sat. But some things remained constant. The Molari delegation sat quietly in their section, much smaller than before, but still present. Their descendants had kept every promise made in the peace agreement. They had become one of humanity's most reliable allies, bound not by love, but by respect and understanding. "Thank you for inviting me to speak," James began. His voice was steady despite his age. "You asked me to tell you about humanity, about who we are and what we believe. I could talk about our science, our art, our dreams. But I think the best way to explain humans is to tell you a story." He told them about New Haven, about the warning the Keeper had given and how Vrix had ignored it, about the months of patient preparation, the network of spies and informants, the detailed plans that covered every possibility, about the rescue that freed not just humans, but 20,000 others from 18 species. "The Malari thought we were weak because we talked about peace," James said. "They thought we were soft because we preferred diplomacy to war. They were wrong. We chose peace because we understood something they didn't. War is easy. Peace is hard. Anyone can destroy. It takes true strength to build." He looked around the chamber at the young alien delegates who were listening with wide eyes. "But here is the other lesson," James continued. "If you hurt us, we will remember. Not because we want revenge. Because we understand that forgetting is dangerous. If we forget what happened to us, we might let it happen again. If we forget who hurt us, we can't protect ourselves in the future. So we remember. We write down what happened. We teach it to our children. And we make sure the whole galaxy knows the truth." James paused, letting his words sink in. "The Malari are our friends now. Real friends. They've worked for 50 years to prove they've changed, and we believe them. But we still remember what they did. We still teach our children about New Haven, not to hate the Malari, to understand that evil can come from anywhere, and the only defense against it is eternal watchfulness." After the speech, a young alien approached James. She was from a species that looked like tall birds with bright feathers. Her name was Kira, and she was a historian from her homeworld. "Ambassador Park," Kira said, "I've studied your species for many years. There's something I've never understood. The Keeper warned Vrix not to attack you. Why? What makes humans so different?" James smiled. He had been asked this question many times over the years. "Come with me," he said. "I'll show you something." He led her through the station to a quiet room with a large window looking out at the stars. On the wall was a plaque with words written in dozens of alien languages. "Read it," James said. Kira studied the plaque. In her own language, it said, "Do not touch the humans. They will follow you to the end of the universe, and they will be smiling when they arrive." This phrase is spread to every corner of the galaxy, James explained. Slavers check their passenger lists for human names. Predator species think twice before attacking human ships. Not because we're the strongest or the fastest. We're not. But because they know that if they hurt us, we won't stop until things are made right. "But why?" Kira asked. "Why are you like this?" James thought about it. He remembered the mines on Rick 7. He remembered the friends he had made among the other prisoners. He remembered the moment when Mike Brown kicked down that door and told him his sister had sent him. "I think it's because we're afraid," he said finally. Kira tilted her head, confused. "Afraid?" "Afraid of being alone. Afraid of losing the people we love. Afraid that if we don't fight for each other, no one will fight for us. So we made a promise to ourselves long before we reached the stars. No matter what happens, no matter how far we have to go, we never leave anyone behind. We never abandon our own. We never let go." Back on New Haven, Lisa Park sat in her garden as the sun set. Her grandchildren had gone home after their visit. Leaving her alone with her memories, she thought about Tom Wilson, who had died peacefully 10 years ago, honored as the greatest diplomat in human history. She thought about David Kim, whose rescue operation was still studied in military academies across the galaxy. She thought about Amy Lee, who had become the director of human intelligence and had recently retired to write her memoirs. Most of all, she thought about her brother James, still out there among the stars, still building bridges between worlds. The Keeper had been right about humans. They were different, not because they were strong or clever or brave, though they were all of those things. They were different because they understood something fundamental about the universe, that the bonds between people are the only things that truly matter. In the great archives of the Galactic Assembly, the story of New Haven was recorded for all time. Future generations would read it and learn. Species yet to achieve space travel would one day discover it and understand. The legend had spread to every corner of known space. It was told in trading posts and military academies. It was whispered in the courts of kings and shouted in the markets of commoners. It had become one of the founding myths of galactic civilization. Do not assault the humans. They remember everything. They forgive but never forget. They will follow you across time and space. And no matter how long it takes, no matter what stands in their way, they will find you. Because humans never, ever let go. Lisa smiled and closed her eyes, listening to the wind through her garden. Somewhere out there, her brother was watching the same stars. Somewhere out there, new species were learning the lesson that the Malari had learned so painfully. And somewhere out there, the Keeper continued its eternal watch, pleased that its warning had finally been understood. The universe was vast and full of dangers. But as long as humans remembered who they were and what they stood for, they would face those dangers together. They would protect each other. They would fight for each other. And they would never, ever let go.